issue that this government is having to tackle. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is anyone taking the call? I call the Honourable Nathan Guy.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you very much for allowing me to take a call on the appropriations review of the Ministry for Primary Industries 2016-17. It's a great time to reflect on MPI and also the new Minister's performance, Damien O'Connor, over the last 6 months. It's been fascinating to see what has occurred because, as Minister Hipkins knows, this review, appropriations review, is right up to the present day. And if he bothers to have a read of the report, he will see a whole lot of things that I'm going to canvass that is very topical for rural communities right now. And in particular, I will be talking about Mycoplasma bovis, which is a cattle disease that is certainly impacting on a large amount of rural communities and farmers up and down the country. And I'm sure that Urban MP would be very keen to hear from this side of the House about the financial strain that it is impacting on those farmers up and down the country. And what we feel on this side of the House is that while they have gone cap in hand to industry and got some money, we feel that the compensation is still too slow. It seems to be a bureaucratic nightmare for farmers to have to work their way through this process. And I stood up in the Parliament about 5 or 6 weeks ago when Minister O'Connor had a ministerial statement, and I challenged the Minister and said that compensation should be fair and fast. And we aren't seeing that now. What we are hearing in my office and in other rural electorates throughout the country, that farmers are still waiting, and it's just not good enough. These are farming families that have made the right decision to support MPI and get on to cull and hopefully eradicate M. bovis forever. But we are still waiting to see, will the government fully fund in budget 2018 enough money to compensate these farmers? Let's wait and see. We only have a couple of weeks to know the answer to that. What's also interesting, and it's referred to in the report from the Primary Production Select Committee, is the Minister, when he came into his new role, he decided, and he campaigned on it, that he wanted to smash apart the Ministry for Primary Industries and create standalone entities. Well, there was huge pushback from officials. They said it's a nonsense. We will lose our competent authority in international markets to do with food safety and biosecurity. So what happened there is that the officials wore down the Minister. And the Minister got to a point, he was almost on his knees and had to save face, and they came up with this rebranding exercise. So right now we're seeing 4 business entities rolled out from MPI, costing $17 million. And this money is coming from the Primary Growth Partnership Fund. This is research and development. Money that's being raided from the front line of the primary sector, lifting value in our export markets, innovation and technology, so that there can be a sticker on the door that says Biosecurity New Zealand, or Fisheries New Zealand, or Forestry New Zealand. I can't see, and we wait, Matua Jones, for your little launch of your forestry thing. You'll probably get a hat with a pine tree on the top of it, or maybe a manuka seedling. We'll wait and see whether you can deliver on your aspirational goals, and I'm unsure whether you will be able to do that or not. What's also been really interesting of late, Madam Chair, is to do with irrigation. And we saw this afternoon, for the second time in just the last couple of weeks, that the Minister had to stand up and correct an answer. So he has misled Parliament now, just on this one particular topic, twice. The first one, he stood up in an answer to me in the House and said, yes, I have met Crown irrigation officials. Then he went back to his office, and they scurried through the paperwork, and he remembered, oh, shivers, Madam Chair.
The Honourable Nathan Guy.
Thank you. Then he realised that he had met Crown irrigation officials in opposition, probably when they came to the Primary Production Select Committee. So he had to come into the House and correct that one. Then I peppered him with some more questions and asked him, has Crown irrigation requested a meeting with you? Stood up in the House and said no. Well, what we heard today was, I think, and I've just got to clarify this, on 3, if not 4 occasions, Crown irrigation had written to the minister requesting a meeting. The minister didn't have the balls to get those officials in his office and say, I'm sorry, I'm going to raid $100 million from this fund, when farmers and growers rely on it, particularly when we think about climate change. This is all about mitigation and drought protection and food production, security for rural communities, actually supplying water through to some of our cities and towns. I heard on the weekend that Central Plains has kept 2 lake taupos of water in the ground. Isn't that a fantastic thing? That water then flows into Lake Ellesmere, Te Waihora. These are the benefits of water storage. But we've had a raid on the primary sector, on the irrigation fund. $100 million is being siphoned out of it because they can't make their numbers match up for budget 2018. Also, what's been really interesting is the Primary Sector Council has just been launched. Some great names in there, Madam Chair, great people. I know most of them. But when you look through those names, there is not one dairy industry processing person. You would think, for the size of the New Zealand dairy industry, that you would have an industry representative, not you, Madam Chair, but you would think the minister would choose to have a dairy industry representative in that council. Well, no, he has turned his back on the New Zealand dairy industry. And I'll tell you why. It's because there's a review of the Dairy Industry Restructuring Act. We still don't know the terms of reference. We know it's going to take about 12 months. And I'll bet you bottom dollar that's going to be about dealing to dairy farmers in New Zealand. It's going to be outside of contestability and competition in the New Zealand dairy industry, which was how the Act was set up. So the review is going to go from here out to here. It's going to talk about things like land use, our cow cap, stocking rate, emissions, water quality, compaction. All of these things are well beyond the scope and the way the legislation was set up in this parliament. That's why there is no dairy industry processor representative in the Primary Sector Council. That's why I don't think they are going to achieve a lot, and I'm disappointed by that. But I do wish them well. You would have thought, with 9 years in opposition, that the minister wouldn't need a council to tell him what to do in his new role as minister. What would have been really interesting is if the council had been brought in the early times of the formation of the coalition. What would they have advised on irrigation? They would have said, keep it, it's really important. It's improving the environment. We should have more of it. 6 regions were declared in drought this summer. You would have thought the government would want to help regional New Zealand and farmers and growers, but no. What would the Primary Industry Council have recommended on an ETS charge and bringing in biological emissions, that's livestock, into the ETS? The minister's already indicated at the East Coast Field Days a couple of weeks ago that farmers are going to be taxed to the tune of $5,000. This is ahead of the Climate Change Commission doing their investigation and their report. So we already know that that's happening. So once again, that's why there's no dairy representative. So in summary, it's been a pretty pathetic start for the Minister of Agriculture in his role.
I call Ian McKelvey.
Thank you, Madam Chair.